Hi there, class. It's Faisal here, coming at you with your class of the day for ENG4U, June 11th. So, we're going to be talking about Othello Act 2 today, right? And there's quite a bit to talk about here, but I'm going to just be hitting on the most important points. So, the first point is the setting, right? Which has moved from Venice to Cyprus now. So, Othello and the crew are there to defend the island from the Turkish fleet that is coming to invade the one we were all talking about. So let's see what happens. So Othello says on page 59, Act 2, Scene 1, line 203, right here. He says very simply, "News, friends, our wars are done. The Turks are drowned." Right? So, with that, we are finished with the Turkish part of the story, right? If anyone was expecting a war, there's no war because apparently there was a storm and all of those Turkish fleets that they were so worried about end up at the bottom of the sea, right? And Othello doesn't actually have to do anything, right? So the Turks just have an accident there outside the island. They don't even make it to the fight, so there's no war anymore. So, the war ends up being what's called a plot device, which is to say, just something that created a set of circumstances for the play. Because now, Othello and everyone else, they're all on the island, right? And there's no Duke here, there's no Brabantio, right? All of those people are way back in Venice, and Othello is essentially in charge of this island by default. So there's a celebration of their victory, right? And everything like that. Othello is no longer in war mode, but rather now is in honeymoon mode, right? Because as you might remember, he and Desdemona came along for the war, right? Because she didn't want to be separated from Othello. But they haven't really had time for each other before now, right? Because Othello would have been busy organizing the army and everything like that, right? So they haven't had time for each other before this point, but now, well, they can do that, right? Because there's no more war. So lucky for Othello, he can now finally have a proper honeymoon, right? And not so busy anymore. But Iago is, of course, hatching his plans at the same time. Iago says, just on the same page, page 59, where before Othello comes in, he says, "Oh, you are well tuned now, but I'll set down the pegs that make this music as honest as I am," right? That, by the way, is an aside. When you see an aside, it's like a soliloquy. He's talking to the audience. But nevertheless, Iago here is planning his business against Othello. Now, just a quick note about this guy, Rodrigo. Rodrigo, we saw at the beginning, he is in love with Desdemona and everything like that. And Iago has convinced him of something very specific here. This is, again, on page 59, Act 2, Scene 1, line 222. "Lay thy finger thus, and let thy soul be instructed. Mark me with violence she first loved the more, but for bragging and telling her fantastical lies, and she will love him still for prating. Let not thy discreet heart think it, her eye must be fed, and what delight shall she have to look on the devil? When the blood is made dull with the act of sport, there should be again to inflame it, and to give satiety a fresh appetite, loveliness in favour, sympathy in years, manners and beauties, all which the more is defective in. Now, for want of these required conveniences, her delicate tenderness will find itself abused, begin to heave the gorge, relish and abhor the more. Very nature will instruct her in it, and compel her to some second choice." So, this is how Iago is controlling our sorry, let me say that again. Iago is controlling Rodrigo, right? Is that he has promised that number one, Desdemona is going to get tired of Othello, right? Like he says here, right? What delight shall she have to look on the devil, right? That she's gonna get tired of this guy, and that once she's tired of him, that she'll look for other people, right? He says, of course, because that's his target. Now, sir, this granted, as it is most pregnant and unforced position, what stands so eminent in this degree of this fortune as Cassio does? So, he's saying she's gonna go for Cassio because, Cassio is the next guy, essentially, in her list. Um, and once she's tired of Othello, she'll go there. So, the central promise that Iago is making to Rodrigo is that he's gonna get him Desdemona, right? That if you help me and give me money and everything like that, that he will help him get Desdemona, right? So Iago promises Rodrigo that, and Rodrigo, being a not very smart person, uh, he says, "Oh yes, okay, I'll do whatever you say." Right, and so he's sort of makes himself into Iago's puppet, right? So Rodrigo is ultimately a simple character to understand because he's very stupid, right? He just does what Iago says because he's told, you do what I say and Desdemona will be yours, right? So, he's gonna essentially be Iago's little pawn from this point forward in the play, and that's why, right? That he thinks, I do what this guy says, and he'll give me Desdemona, right? So he trusts Iago, and obviously he shouldn't. Now then, uh, let's get to the party. Now, our friend Gavin, right, one of the students in the class, on the June 9th post made a link, right, which you guys might want to click on, right, which contains a film version that I'm sure is perfectly legal of the Othello film from 1995, right? That's a good link. You should click on it because this scene is really a scene where you need to sort of watch it in order to fully understand it, right? I will again stress this so much. If you can watch the play by clicking on this link, then you absolutely should, because this is a play that is meant to be seen. All right. So, in this party, nevertheless, in Act 2, Scene 3, right, one of the most important scenes in the play, you've got Othello here who's about to have his honeymoon, right? Where he says at the beginning of the scene, Act 2, Scene 3, Line 1, "Good Michael, look you to the guard tonight. Let's teach ourselves that honorable stop not to outsport discretion," right? That's on page 65. So, there he's giving Michael Cassio, right? That's his lieutenant, the job of keeping the peace, right? That he's going to essentially make sure nothing gets so crazy, so that he, Othello, can take the night off, right? That's what Othello wants, right? Othello wants to take the night off, right? That's his whole thing, to be with his wife and have his honeymoon, right? So what he's doing when he leaves the stage right here at the beginning of the scene, right, where it says Exeunt Othello, Desdemona, and attendants, right? When he leaves, right, he's going to be with Desdemona and essentially consummate his marriage, right? So that's what he's doing there, right? He's starting his marriage, right? Which he was not. I mean, we don't know what the Desdemona and him were doing before that, right? But this is the formal honeymoon and everything like that. So it's an important moment for him, right? So that's something to keep in mind. So Cassio's job is very simple, which is to, keep the peace, make sure that, no one bothers the city, no one parties too hard or starts a fire or anything like that. And by the end of the scene, right, and you guys again should watch it and read it, Iago will have gotten Cassio fired, right? And, it's a very intricate sort of plan, right? It starts with drinking, right? Because Cassio, as he says, on page 67, line 39, Act 2, Scene 3, line 39. I have drunk but 1 cup tonight, and that was craftily qualified too, meaning that he watered it down. And behold what innovation it makes here. I am fortunate in the infirmity, and dare not task my weakness with any more. Right? So Cassio can't handle his drink. Right? So he is, he can drink 1 watered down cup of wine, and that's it. But Iago is going to use that, right? As he says here, in this, by the way, on line 49, this is a soliloquy. If I can fasten but 1 cup upon him with that which he hath drunk tonight already, he'll be as full of quarrel and offense as my young mistress's dog. Right? So step 1 is he's gonna get Cassio drunk. Right? So Cassio never drinks, but Iago, and again, watch the film so that you can see how this works. Iago sort of peer pressures him into it, right? And he gets Cassio drunk, right? He then tells this Montano fellow, where is that? Where that Cassio here has a drinking problem, right? So Montano, incidentally, is one of the nobles in Cyprus, right? So he's a sort of the Brabantio of Cyprus, right? He's a important man, rich, powerful, everything like that, right? A friend of Othello, right? And Iago tells this Montano guy, right, when he sees Cassio drunk, "'Tis evermore the prologue to his sleep. He'll watch the horologe a double set, if drink rock not his cradle," right? And you see horologe there. Watch the clock 2 days in a row, that is, he'll stay up all night. So what he's saying is that Cassio cannot go to sleep without getting drunk, right? So that's the little lie that Iago plants there. And at that point, everything starts to come undone, right? Because Cassio, step 3 is that Rodrigo, right, who is, remember, Iago's pawn, gets Cassio angry and gets himself beaten up by Cassio, right? We see that right here, right, where we don't know what Rodrigo said, and Cassio's hitting him, right? He says, "You rogue, you rascal," right? So Montano sees that, right? He witnesses that, and he thinks that Cassio's a drunk, tries to calm him down, and ends up fighting him. And then Iago. Iago and Rodrigo then yell about mutiny and alarm. People start to panic, and what do you know? Othello has to come out and calm people down, right? When he says on line 165, "Hold for your lives," he has had to come back from his honeymoon, right? So Othello was trying to, enjoy himself, right? It's his honeymoon, but now this has happened, right? So he sort of wrecked the honeymoon of Othello, or at least it seems like Cassio has. So, everything that happened was set up by Iago. Iago is the puppet master. He's a smooth operator. No one knows that he's behind it, not Othello, and not even Cassio, right? So it's important to remember dramatic irony when we're understanding the scene, right? So he told his lieutenant to keep the peace, right, while he's gone with Desdemona, and now he's coming back, right? He hears a bunch of noises, and here's the lieutenant, right? Here's the guy drunk, and he's getting in fights, right? He's fighting with Montano. He actually hurt Montano, so Othello, of course, is going to be mad at him, and of course, right, from his perspective, you're going to fire this guy. Because why wouldn't you, right? He's caused a bunch of trouble, and he's wrecked your honeymoon, right? From Cassio's perspective, Iago gave him something to drink, sure, but he is the one who chose to drink, right? He's the one who put that cup to his lips. Iago sort of cajoled him into doing it, but it's still Cassio that made the choice. And plus, as we're about to see, Iago tries to defend him before Othello fired him. So, Cassio thinks that Iago's still a good guy. So, this is a very important thing about Othello, right? Which is, again, the dramatic irony, right? You can't reasonably say that Othello is stupid for not understanding what was happening here because, well, the dramatic irony means that he was not listening to Iago's soliloquies or asides, right? He does not know what Iago is doing. We see Iago plan things out, but the characters, right, mainly Othello, is not listening to Iago, right? So that is why, you can't really say Iago's stupid. Same thing with Cassio, right? So this is a very big aspect of this play because, like I said in the first act, you always will know what Iago is doing, right? The audience always knows, but the whole thing here is that Iago does not how should I put this? Iago's actions are not known to the characters on stage, right? So we know, but the characters on stage don't know. And let me tell you, as this play goes on, that drives you crazy, right? For those of you who've gotten to the end already, you'll know, right? By the end, you sort of really hate Iago. Let's take a look at Iago's speech here, right? Which is probably one of the more remarkable speeches in the play, right? Act 2, Scene 3, page 77. Iago here says, "Touch me not so near. I had rather have this tongue cut from my mouth than it should do offence to Michael Cassio. Yet I persuade myself to speak the truth shall nothing wrong him. Thus it is, General Montano and myself being in speech, there comes a fellow crying out for help, and Cassio following him with determined sword to execute upon him. Sir, this gentleman steps into Cassio and entreats his pause. Myself the crying fellow did pursue, lest by his clamour, as it so fell out, the time might fall in fright. He, swift of foot, outran my purpose, and I returned the rather for that I heard the clink and fall of swords, and Cassio high in oath, which till tonight I never might say before. When I came back, for this was brief, I found them close together, at blows and thrust, even as again they were when you yourself did part them. More of this matter cannot I report, but men are men, the best sometimes forget themselves. Though Cassio did some little wrong to him, as men in rage strike those that wish them best, yet surely Cassio, I believe, received from him that fled some strange indignity which patience could not pass." So, here's what's happening here. Iago, in this speech, is not lying, right? There are no lies that Iago is telling there, right? He is speaking the truth, right? Cassio did do this. Cassio did do that, right? So there's nothing in there that's a lie. And plus, again, at the end, he does try to defend Cassio, right? Though Cassio did some little wrong to him, as men in rage strike those who wish them best, right? So, again, we as the audience know what he did, right? But the people around him do not, right? So this is again him showing his face as the master puppet master, right? And the imagery of the devil is very much present here because he appears to be a friend and well-wisher to both Othello and Cassio, right? He's speaking the truth to Othello, and he's lying, of course. He's lying, but, he's defending Cassio, so Cassio thinks he's his friend too. So everyone thinks he's their friend, but in reality, he's trying to destroy the person. So the analogy would perhaps be best linked. The analogy is to the snake in the Garden of Eden, right? Where the snake says, "Hey, go eat from this tree. It'll give you all this knowledge," right? So that is what the snake is saying. But of course, the snake was lying, right, and got the Adam and Eve kicked out of the garden. So that's the role that Iago is fulfilling here, right? And he comes out of this scene smelling like a rose. No one suspects that he's done anything, right? Not Othello, not Rodrigo, not Cassio. Everyone thinks he's a good guy. So, he does such a good job of getting Cassio fired that after he's fired, Cassio turns to Iago for advice, right? And this happens on page 83 of the PDF here. Act 2, Scene 3, line 313. Cassio, he's sad, he's lost his job, and everyone's angry at him, and they think he's a drunk, right? And Iago says, "You or any living man living may be drunk at some time, man. I'll tell you what you shall do. Our general's wife is now the general. I may say so in this respect, for that he hath devoted and given himself to the contemplation mark and denotement of her parts and graces. Confess yourself freely to her, importune her help to put you in your place again." So Iago has some great advice, which is, hey Cassio, you're fired. That's okay. Desdemona is a really nice lady, and Othello will do anything that she asks. So why don't you just go and ask Desdemona? You two are friends anyway, right? And, then he will give you your job back, right? So he gives him that advice, right? And Cassio here is, being actually given, if you think about it, pretty good advice, right? That is a way for him to get his job back. But of course, this is all part of Iago's plan, right? If you take a look at the soliloquy at the end, at the bottom of the same page, right, line 337. And what's he that says, "I play the villain? When this advice is free, I give an honest probal to thinking, and indeed the course to win the more again. For 'tis easy the unclining Desdemona to subdue in any honest suit. She's framed as fruitful, as free as the free elements, and then for her to win the more, weren't to renounce his baptism, all seals and symbols of redeemed sin, his soul is so enfettered to her love, that she may make, unmake, do what she list, even as her appetite shall play the god with his weak function. How am I then a villain to counsel Cassio to this parallel course directly to his good?" Right? So what Iago is saying there is that, this is good advice. Go talk to Desdemona, and Othello will do anything for her, right? That Othello loves her so much that, he'll do anything for her. So this is good advice for Cassio, but of course Iago says, "Divinity of hell, when devils will the blackest sins put on, they do suggest it first with heavenly shows, as I do now. For whiles this honest fool plies Desdemona to repair his fortunes, and she for him pleads strongly to the more, I'll pour this pestilence into his ear, that she repeals him for her body's lust." Right? So that's the plan. Right? Cassio's going to go ask her for help. Iago's going to tell Othello, hey, something's going on with Cassio there. Right? What's going on there? So, that is Iago's game here. Now, so that brings us to the end of this act. I mean, there's Rodrigo again, but Rodrigo's an idiot, does whatever Iago says. And so that brings us to the end of Act 3. And now you have the real taste for what Iago is like. So, two things before we're finished. First of all, tomorrow's going to be a Google meeting, right? So no video tomorrow, right? There'll be a Google meeting, right? It'll be at 2 p.m. in the Google meeting room, right? So that's just as normal. So make sure you come. I'll be asking questions about the play and answering questions from you guys. So let's all meet there. And then there's one other thing. And you know what? I'm going to show you guys this email I got, just so you know it's not my fault that this is happening. Okay, so I got this email from the principal. This is for all of our classes, saying that the due date for marks is going to be, where is it? Moved up one day, right? So let's see. It says here, please set your deadlines with your students to ensure you're able to meet the first deadline of Wednesday, June 24th. I thought it was the 26th. And the ultimate deadline of June 25th. Oh my god. So, what that means is that the CPT is going to have to be due on June 23rd, right? So the CPT will be due June 23rd. It's an essay on Othello, right? And what it is you will pick your own question, as I was saying before. Now, that's a bit tighter than I was expecting, right? But, you know, this is from the vice principal. It's not for me, right? You saw the email, right? I didn't decide that. I thought I would give you at least 2 more days. So, what I'm going to do is today, right? Yesterday, your time, I'm going to post the CPT, right? So you guys can start taking a look at it. And tomorrow during the Google Meetup, I will talk about what this essay is going to look like, and how you should go about writing it so that we can sort of get the ball rolling there. You do still have about 13 days, so there is still time, but it's just not as much time as I was hoping, right? And again, before you get mad at me, look, I got it from the vice principal, right? So I'm the one who I'm not the one who did this, right? It was him. So don't be mad at me. Okay, so with that in mind, I will talk to you guys tomorrow. I'll post the CPT. It's already posted before this video is even up. So I will talk to you guys soon, and I hope you're all doing well.